Yeah, thank you so much for your question. And you've laid out so many points here about kind of the mismanagement of America's funds. And we could add a few more to them. The craziness of spending more money than it costs to buy a presidential jet to rehab a jet that was given to the president so that he could actually send it on to his personal library after he leaves office. But it is profoundly disturbing, and I appreciate the way you framed it. There's enough money for luxury glitz, for a mega ballroom. I can't even imagine how anything could cost that much to build. I mean, it's going to have an 1/8 inch of gold on every surface or something. I don't know. But that doesn't serve the American people. That doesn't make one single person in America have better health care or better education or a decent home and a decent community or a better job. Doesn't give equality of opportunity. Doesn't tackle any of our environmental issues. It is simply a gross display by a president who has constructed his entire administration on the basis of a theory to govern, which is families lose and billionaires win. Families lose their health care, so there can be massive tax breaks for billionaires. They lose their Medicaid on top of their ACA health care in order to fund massive tax breaks for billionaires. They lose their nutrition assistance to fund tax breaks for billionaires. And then over the next 30 years, their bill runs up $30 trillion in additional debt to fund these breaks for billionaires. Maybe I should say trillionaires now. And you think about how that debt, that additional $30 trillion in debt, how much that will compromise the ability to have future programs of health care and housing and education. I mean, the folks in my state are looking at the same thing as the folks of your state. We had last Wednesday the information come out a week ago so people could look on the exchange and see what their policies were going to cost. And we don't have a new comprehensive analysis. The pre-analysis, the projection, was that the average cost would go up not 5% or 10% or 15%, but about 68%. And that's because the premium goes up, and the tax credits come down, and you're massively more expensive. Now, maybe a lot more, because the average across the country is that payments will go up 114%, more than double. But how do you explain to anyone that you slashed their health care affordability to fund a giveaway of $20 to $40 billion to Argentina, or to fund that new ballroom? I mean, that's insane. I mean, that is, well, just like the rich rubbing our nose in it for ordinary Americans, that you won't be able to afford health care, but wow, we got that new jet, the jet you talked about for Nome. I hadn't heard about that one. We got the new ballroom. We got the tax breaks for the richest people. This government buying for the billionaires, and it ties in to the authoritarian perspective. Because if you're a regular leader of a democracy, you feel you're accountable to the people, and you would never, ever pursue a bill that defunds health care for ordinary families to put more dollars in the pocket of the already richest Americans. But if you're an authoritarian, and the entire time I've been on the floor has been to ring the alarm bells. Ring the alarm bells. Authoritarianism is here now. I'm told that each time I say this, lots of bells are posted online. So just for my team's fun, ring the alarm bells. I want that to be heard all across America, that we are way off track. This is the wrong way to go. In a democracy, you want to have the foundations for families to thrive because you're accountable to the people, and the people run the operation. But in an authoritarian government, boy, that's not the case at all. Instead, it's like the leaders feel like the people are accountable to them. So if they have to do without, well, too bad. As the phrase goes, let them eat cake. If they don't have bread, oh, let them eat cake. And so there we are. And our responsibility is to say to the American people, the way to stop this authoritarian takeover is to have a very significant, robust demonstrations across America like we had on Saturday, that the citizens have to make a big deal, protest outside our offices, write to us, phone us, give us a hard time, tell us we should be doing more. It's that feedback that really caused me to say I need to try to do more to ring the alarm bells about where we're headed, and thus to be up here all night and now through the morning and into the afternoon. I'm getting a little unsteady on my feet, but if we collectively, through this dialogue, are bringing attention to people and saying, yes, 7 million people were out there in the streets. Next time we need 10 million. Or do your local demonstration with those who went, hear about what they did, and spread the word that this is not normal. This destruction of our rights, this weaponization of the judiciary to go after political enemies, the effort to open the doors so that the president can deploy with court's approval the military into our cities when there is no rebellion, no insurrection, and no invasion. So that is our responsibility, to call it out and to carry the fight. And I believe the American people are starting to understand just how much their freedoms are being crushed. And that's what we need to be in partnership with to steer this country back and save our republic.
Will the senator from Oregon yield for a question?
I see the senator from Washington State is on the floor, and I would very happy to yield to a question.
I thank the senator from Oregon, and first let me just commend you for what you are doing here throughout the night, throughout today, calling attention to a really critical issue in this country. So many people come up to me, and you know, because we go back and forth to the West Coast all the time, how many people walk up to us and say, what can I do about this? And each one of us has to say, here's what I can do. And I want to thank you for doing what you are doing today, because you're going above and beyond to point out to people that, as your chart says, authoritarianism is here, and it is here now. And we can ignore it, or we can speak out, and you have spent all night long and all day standing on your feet at, I'm sure, great personal sacrifice to fight for everyone in this country and to sound the alarm, as you have been talking about. And so I just personally want to thank you, and I want to reiterate something that you have said for all of these hours, and actually many times to me over the past few months, that the fact that Trump is using his place in government to control every aspect of our life, whether it's what our schools are teaching or not teaching. It's whether or not he's prosecuting his enemies, which he is doing. It's cutting off projects and funding to punish the political opposition. And as you and I both know, we represent, quote, blue states, but we have a lot of red counties and cities and neighborhoods, and even within all of our blue districts. And you can't just randomly say I'm hurting blue without hurting red, because these are all Americans. But he is using his power to do that. We are seeing him, as you know well, in your home state, deploying troops to intimidate Democrats. And I listened to you late last night talk about what is happening in Portland and The misuse of this kind of power should be frightening to every single American. And we need to stand up and we need to call it out, which is what you are doing today. And even dictating what late night TV host is doing is part of this whole picture that you've been describing. But I came to the floor today as your partner on the Appropriations Committee. We serve on that together. And we all know in this body how important that committee is because we decide where the funding is going to go in the country. Now, I've been out on this floor, I've been at home, I've been everywhere talking about the power of the purse, which sounds kind of like this quaint little phrase. But it is really important. For anybody who has a family, you know that the person who writes the checks in the checkbook decides where the money's going to go. Well, that power of that checkbook, that power of the purse, as it is called, lands in this side of the aisle, on this side of the White House and Congress. We have the power of the purse. Why is that? Because we represent our constituents from across the country. I'm from Washington State, you from Oregon, people from Illinois and Alabama and Florida, all come here to be a voice for their constituents on where their taxpayers are going to go. And within this country, the power of the purse means we have the ability to decide where the money is going to go because we represent our constituents. That's what they call on us to do. And I am seeing Trump do an all-out assault on Congress's power of the purse. So I wanted to come here today and ask you your thoughts on how this president is undermining the power of the purse and how it plays into your ringing the bells about authoritarianism.
Ringing the alarm bells for the authoritarian takeover. And the power of the purse is one of those fundamental ways that, in fact, the president is concentrating his power. The difference between a democracy, in a democracy, the legislature says, here are the programs, here's how we want to run them, and here's how we're going to fund them. And it brings together the collective wisdom of a large group that comes from every portion of the nation, like we do here, our 100 senators from 50 states. And we not only bring our geographic differences, we bring our life differences and our life skills, and all of that helps us form a pretty complex set of decisions about the programs that need more support because of the challenges we're facing as a nation at that moment, and those that can do with less support. And that's our responsibility, but all those voices together are just so central to that. In an authoritarian nation, all of that responsibility, design the program, fund the program, choose whether the program will live or die, is all transferred to the executive. So if we're thinking authoritarians over here, power of the purse with the executive, democracy over here, power of the purse with the legislature. So Russell Vought, the current head of OMB, he's a well-trained, clever man, and he's saying, well, let's see how we can actually take the power of the purse. You passed a bill for fiscal year 25, and now we're not longer in fiscal, but let's say we were. Well, maybe I can just slow walk the funds for the programs I don't want to fund. That way the decision is transferred to the executive. Maybe I can freeze them. Maybe I can impound them, basically permanently take them off the table. See if I can get away with that. Maybe I can send over a request to have Congress formally undo the programs that they have funded. And they did send one of those over, and it was voted, and it needed a majority vote in both chambers. But the problem with that is you have a bipartisan vision to serve the entire, these desks to me are now representing the geography of the United States, to serve the entire breadth and depth of our nation with all of our differences. And then on a partisan basis, meaning half the room, they decide what programs to cut. And that means a deal was done in the beginning between Democrats and Republicans, and then it was undone. And the programs that were cut were the programs, by and large, that Democrats had advocated for. How do you do the next deal in that situation? And then we have Mr. Vought saying, what I'll do is pretend I'm going to spend it, but then in the last 45 days, I'll send a notification that I'd like Congress to do it, but there is a waiting period, so therefore I know what I have done is set it up so that before those 45 days are out, the end of the fiscal year comes, and that bucket that goes to that program goes poof into thin air. And that's the fancy term he's used for the pocket rescission. And so here we are saying to our Republican colleagues, if you're negotiating in good faith to serve the interests and concerns that all 100 senators bring here, then a bill forged in that bipartisan manner can only be undone in a bipartisan manner. And we do rescissions in a bipartisan manner. We do undo funding. We take 1 year, 2 year, 3 year funding that turned out not to be needed or better spent elsewhere, and we pull it back and we put it into a different program. But we do that readjustment in the same bipartisan way we did the initial program. So we're saying to our colleagues across the aisle, if the power of the purse means something, and it does, the difference between authoritarian government and a democracy, then work with us to defend our Constitution. Defend that what we have done together cannot be undone by the executive. And so far, we have not received a yes, we will defend the Constitution. And what I hear is mainly, yeah, President Trump would never go for that. When you hear that, you know you're trapped in an authoritarian, because the vision of our nation is that we, the Congress, will forge these programs and decide how to fund them, how much, and when it's like, can't do that because the Trump would be upset. Well, that just confirms we are in authoritarianism now, and it's not just the power of the purse, of course. It's attack on due process. It's attack on free press. It's attack on freedom of speech. It is the weaponization of the Department of Justice. It is the ignoring the laws that apply to the executive completely, like firing all the IGs, getting rid of all the referees. In the book that I really spent the night trying to use as a framework in order to say, hey, experts who have studied how democracies die, they don't die with people with guns anymore. They die, people get elected, and then they follow the authoritarian playbook on how to basically undo the checks and balances and amplify the power. And another piece of that we should be very concerned about in the Northwest right now, more Portland, but who knows what happens in Seattle, is trying to carve a path in which Trump has court decisions that say he can put troops into the street whenever he wants. And that is a massively dangerous amplification of authoritarian power. And that's why what we do this year makes such a difference, that we have to protest and say this is not normal. We have to ring the alarm bells. We have to praise the 7 million people who got out there and said no kings in the United States. And that's such a beautiful short way of saying no authoritarianism. We want our republic back, and we're willing to fight to make that happen.
And we want our voices to be heard. That's what you're doing, and I thank the senator from Oregon for all he's been doing for so long, for so many years, but especially for the last 20-plus hours that you've been on the floor.
Too many.
Too many hours on the floor, reminding us all of why this is so critical.
I note that my colleague from Delaware is on the floor.
Yes, I am.
I would welcome a question if you have one.
Will the senator from Oregon yield for a question?
I will yield for a question.
First, let me say thank you, Senator Merkley, for your tenacity, your energy, your compassion, and your love for this country. I mean, really, that's what this is about. That's why you have been standing on this floor for over 20 hours and deals to universities to teach Trump priorities, taking away independence and academic freedom. They tried to push dissenters off airwaves, but this is America. And Senator Merkley, you and I know here the people have the power, and the power of the people matters. Here the voices of our communities hold weight, and that's why I stand with you as you ring the alarms. The people are standing up, they're speaking out, and they're saying enough is enough. What does that look like? It looks like journalists from MSNBC to Fox News handing in their DoD press badges, choosing to stand up for their First Amendment rights rather than bowing to the whims of the Secretary of Defense. It means universities are refusing to play ball, declining the offer. It means Americans use their power of their purses to say, you will not silence someone like Jimmy Kimmel, and he was reinstated. But it doesn't stop there. It's an unprecedented move by federal judges appointed by Democrats and Republicans alike that are speaking out on an impending judicial crisis over the Supreme Court's emergency orders. State governments are joining compacts to protect access to public health for citizens as this administration rips away access to vaccines. Airports across America are refusing to play this administration's propaganda videos, and perhaps most importantly, millions of Americans from across our country have made their voices known and heard. 7 million Americans did what I think was truly a part of the American spirit by using their voices in a peaceful way, assembling, doing it in a way that was both joyful but also patriotic, and demanding that we in Congress also stand up. So we are standing up for our communities, and thank you again, Senator Merkley, for doing so. And we are fighting for families across America who are about to see their health care coverage go up or maybe even be eliminated. In this moment, we don't need a king. The people need a president for all of the people. Not a $20 billion bailout for Argentina, not a new White House gold ballroom when people can't even afford to pay their rent or to buy a home on their own, and not a Justice Department bailout. All while November 1st is fast approaching and tens of millions of Americans face this healthcare crisis. Rising costs or total elimination of their health care or medical debt. Costs are already high, and now this. It's time to do the right thing and to take a stand. And with the president poised to leave town, we ask that he stay and pull together the partners, the House, which has been out of session, and I came from the House. I don't think I ever saw anything like this, where they literally have been missing in action for weeks. As a matter of fact, for our August break, they left in July. This is unprecedented, and we need them back at the table. They need to do the work. And so my question to you, Senator Merkley, in light of what the president wants to spend money on and what the American people need, does the president have his priorities straight? Are his priorities right on behalf of the American people?
Thank you so much to my colleague from Delaware. And the question rather answers itself after listening to all the points you were making, which are right on. How can it possibly be the right priorities if you're spending your money on tax breaks for billionaires while cutting the tax credits that enable families to buy insurance at an affordable price? How can it possibly be the right thing to do that you're cutting child nutrition while you're spending a huge amount on a ballroom, undoubtedly Trumpian gold-style ballroom? How much was it, 200 million or 300 million? Some crazy, crazy sum. I can't even imagine how you could spend that much on a room. And you mentioned this $20 billion bailout, 20 billion with a B, bailout for Argentina. Now, that one came out of nowhere. I don't remember a bill on the floor here saying that we're passing a spending bill that has in it 20, and the president said it may be as much as $40 billion bailout. Is there some authority I don't know about? Maybe. I don't know. The books are complicated. But I doubt it, because what this president is doing as an authoritarian, it's just saying, I'm going to do what the hell I want. I'm in charge. The bank account of America is mine. Hell, I'm going to, build a glitzy ballroom, and I'm going to try to refurbish a jet for an Air Force One that will only be workable for a few months, if that, before I send it off to my presidential library. Huge waste of our money. And this bailout, though, for Argentina, earlier talking to a colleague from Washington State who said, a lot of soybeans are shipped through Washington State, but they're normally bought by China. Well, China isn't buying a single bean this year because of the tension and the argument between our two nations over tariffs. One moment the president's put in a 50% tariff on China, and the next moment they're saying they're not going to send out any strategic minerals, critical minerals. Next moment, well, I'll put a 100% tariff on you. I mean, nobody makes an investment in the United States of America, a factory here, when we're in tariff chaos. There's nothing about this that does anything except throw people up and down, and everyone gets hurt. They don't know if the tariffs is going to affect what they sell. They don't know if they're going to be able to affect the inputs for the things they manufacture. They don't know what they should plant if they're farmers. It's a nightmare. And where are all these beans, unsold soybeans, going to go this year? How are they going to be stored? Are they going to be wasted? Are they going to be plowed back into the ground for fertilizer? I don't know. But here's what I do know, that this chaos is terrible for America. And the small business world came and talked to me yesterday, representatives from, and maybe you had them in your office as well, and they said, Main Street is Pain Street. And I did hear that. I'm going to note that Senator Markey may have been the first person I heard that from, but I thought that was a way to describe it. And they certainly said, yes, there's two components of that pain. One is the loss of the credits to buy health care, because small businesses don't have big plans with big insurers. They provide some help, and folks go and buy on the exchange. And they said, second of all, the tariffs. So Main Street is Pain Street. That's not a good future for America. And families with no health insurance, that's a terrible look for America. And by look, I mean, I don't mean the atmospherics of it. I mean, that is the wrong mission in a republic. And the connection I've been drawn between Trump's authoritarian personality and tendencies is that an authoritarian feels that people are accountable to him. So he can do any damn thing he wants and control anything without advice or controls or checks from anyone. And he's hated it every time checks were applied in the past. He's going after some of those folks now who applied those checks in the past. And the leader of a democracy says, I'm accountable to the people. The people need health care, housing, education, a good paying job, investment in infrastructure, equality of opportunity, and let's take on some of those environmental problems. That's what a leader in democracy does. So here we have this authoritarian president crushing our freedoms, trying to steal the power of the purse from Congress to concentrate it in the executive, proceeding to spend money wherever he wants, that $20 billion. I'd love to see it not be a court. I'd rather have all of the senators right here say, let's pass a bill right now, and say, hell no. You know, a lot of that $20 billion is going to the debt that's been built up in Argentina. And friends of President Trump have reportedly bought that debt at a huge discount. I didn't see how much of a discount. But what that means, if you buy $1 of debt, and you buy, say, let's make it math easy, 25 cents, then you get a 400% return if the money goes to Argentina and they pay off the debt at face value. That's not about making America first. That's about making Scott Bessent and his friends, at least I've seen Scott Bessent's name in some of these articles, and his friends who are connected to buying up Argentina debt. I'm not sure if Scott himself bought it or not. But the point is, make some billionaires richer. It's another make a few friends of the president and friends of his cabinet members richer. Well, that 20 billion, or possibly 40 billion, the president said. Think about that, 20 billion, that's $50 for every single American tossed in a pot to hand out to a strong man in Argentina. 40 billion, $100 a person handed out to a strong man. Every one of us, take $100 out of our pocket.
Senator, yield for one more question.
I will yield for another question. Thank you.
Thank you. As you talked about the small businesses, Senator, I was reminded that as we look at who is actually purchasing this health care in the marketplace, a lot of people don't even know they're on ACA and receiving the tax credit, that half of them are small businesses. I come from Delaware. We are urban, suburban, rural, and coastal. And so we also know that a quarter of farmers and ranchers are getting their health care this way. And then we think about the fact that this issue is disproportionately affecting red states, not just blue states. All Americans are going to be hurt. This is why you're ringing the alarm is so important. And I would ask a very simple question. Is there a connection between the healthcare crisis that we are in?
By threatening the collapse and threatening taking away the research grants and telling them they can't have foreign students that are essential to their revenue stream. All of those authoritarian pieces, the stealing of the purse, but then there's this piece, the philosophy. And the philosophy is the people owe me, the authoritarian, not I'm accountable to them. So therefore, it's totally legit to go for legislation that slashes the programs that are fundamental to families to make the rich richer. And I want to go back to that picture that I had up earlier of the billionaires standing behind President Trump at the inauguration. And at that point, maybe we didn't know for sure, but he had campaigned on helping families, but we didn't see the champions of families behind him. We saw the billionaires behind him. That is exactly what's happened. The philosophy is families lose and billionaires win. And our effort, as those in a democracy, we are fighting for the vision of families thrive and the rich and powerful pay a fair share.
My colleague yield for another question.
I would yield for